A flip-flop of wide receivers at Florida State. Gavin Blackwell in, Jalen Brown out, Brian Smith, Locked On Seminoles, and the Portal Podcast here on the show. So let's start with the addition for Florida State, Brian. I'm more than a little intrigued to see what Florida State does this year, just because they're going from the worst preseason top 10 team statistically in the history of college football to something. We don't really know what that thing is. They're portal heavy again, even though it flopped last year. But they lost Hakeem Williams to Colorado, but they bring in Blackwell from North Carolina. Does he make this Florida State passing game better in a significant way, in your view?
No. He didn't play much the last couple of years. Look, I mean, he's a kid they knew out of high school and recruited. He's got some decent size, decent measurables. He can run, but he just hasn't had production. At the end of the day, if it's beyond a year or so and you don't have production, that's a problem. But he's been in college football like 3 years. So why should I believe he's suddenly going to be good? I'm not buying it. The problem is there aren't elite guys in the portal that they can get for the money they're willing to offer. That's simple as it gets. Florida State's NIL is okay, but it is not elite. That's a problem.
I wouldn't have thought that, given they were just in a lawsuit that's still kind of ongoing, but not really, to leave the ACC. And we were talking about, is Florida State going to pay $370 or $400 million to get out of the ACC? Are you telling me that was never going to happen, Brian?
That is 100% a fact. That was not. Now, the way the new structure is, I think it's after 26, it's like 150, 160 million. That's possible, but like 2029, it's like 75. I could see that. But yeah, that 300 million stuff, I mean, zero chance. Plus, they have the facilities they're just fixing up. Doak Campbell, it was 150, $200 million. It's supposed to be ready for the Alabama game, but like everything was terrible timing. And on top of all that, Malzahn comes in and all that, but it's because they didn't want to fire the head coach who had just signed a mega contract, and they would have owed him everything to fire. Or else, if you go 2-10 and you're at the end of your contract, you're done. Let's be honest.
Right.
So money just didn't work. Just didn't work.
Yeah. So with the addition of Blackwell to the room, do you think it's just a depth piece sort of move from Mike Norvell? Like, we'll might as well add him, see if he works out, see if we can get the most out of him. Do you think receiver is a position where Florida State has an iffy level of production? Because last year they, had brought in some guys like Malik Benson, for instance, and he's at Oregon now, but he went to Florida State and there was no passing game to speak of. That's, of course, a revamped unit for Florida State.
The problem with Florida State's unit is they got Deuce Robinson and they got Squirrel White, both out of the portal, both very productive, both have a chance to make a roster in the NFL. But after that, they have zero experience. Zero. Javen Boggs has been talked about as a possible starter. He's a true freshman. Elijah Moore, B.J. Gibson, Wayne McCoy, those guys are sophomores, all very talented, all highly recruited, but they barely played last year. So I think adding any experienced receiver, especially one, again, they've recruited him out of high school, that made sense. The leadership factor, having a guy with a little size, a little speed, it can't hurt. That's my guess. And again, I just don't think they want to go out and spend a whole bunch of money on a receiver because they got other talented guys, but they're probably a year away. It'll be a little iffy this year if and when Deuce or Squirrel get banged up. Those two guys cannot get hurt.
Thomas Castellanos likely to be Florida State's starting quarterback this year. Brian, I hope for the sake of the fans in Tallahassee, the answer to this next question is yes.
Okay.
Will the passing game be better than it was in 2024?
Is the sun going to come up tomorrow? I mean, the low bar that you set that with, I mean, the answer is yes. I know Thomas from his high school days. He has a cannon. They're going to run an offense, which is going to be downhill, probably run it about 55, 60% of the time and throw deep. That's his strength. And they got speed and size. They don't have any problem athletically outside. It's just inexperienced. But they're not going to run a real complex offense. It should be pretty basic. Screens, bombs, and some deep outs and stuff like that. He's got a gun. But can you really be any worse? I mean, there are Gen B
I
high
don't
school
think
teams
so.
that had better passing games than Florida State last year.
Yeah, it was bad. It was as bad
Yes.
as I can remember. I tell you what, if you wanted to have what in golf you'd call a bloodsome, which is where you play team golf, but you play the worst ball between you and your partner.
Ooh.
Yeah, exactly. Bloodsome. You got to have some good players if you're going to play a bloodsome and not have a 6-hour round. But if you were to make that comparison to other teams in college football, I think the only one comparable to last year's FSU. Toss a couple of Iowa offenses in there. That's the only one that comes to mind immediately for me that was as inept as Florida State was, just completing a forward. A slant felt like a Hail Mary.
That's a great quote.
It just wasn't. Everything was so difficult, and it was just let's throw a screen pass on 3rd and 8. Like, why are you doing that? Because there's no other option.
They couldn't pass protect. The biggest problem when the quarterbacks were scared to death, and they should have been. They should have been given free life insurance because of how bad it was up front. Go look at for your entertainment value for anybody out there, go look at the PFF grades for the offensive linemen last year. Just for your sheer entertainment.
Did any of them hit 70?
There was a couple that played some, but there were games where it looked like a turnstile.
Not good.
There was one play, literally, where 3 Florida State offensive linemen went to 1 linebacker.
Oh, this is not good. This is not good. Not good. Not great, Bob. Not great.
So the quarterback play was bad. The O-line play was bad. And some of the passes were just dead on. Like Malik Benson could fly. He's got hands of stone. So it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
That was hard to cover.
It was. Yeah, it was tough. Speaking of Florida State wide receivers, by the way, I did want to touch on Jaylen Brown, who transferred from Florida State after transferring in from LSU. Pretty highly rated recruit coming out of high school, top 75 player in the class of 2023. He's going to the SEC, or back to the SEC, I should say, making his way to Arkansas. Do you expect the Hogs to have just gotten a game changer or more of a specialist receiver sort of guy?
Super fast, but he just never adapted. Like route running and understanding everything, being physical, all the stuff after the snap is the problem. If he gets behind somebody, it's over. He's one of the fastest players I've ever watched in high school, like insane speed. But he's a track guy playing football right now. He's just not physical enough. Now he's going to the SEC. Okay.
It's a bold strategy, Cotton. Let's see if it works out for him.
That's all I'm going to leave it at.
Yeah. A lot of activity for Florida State. 3 guys leaving, winding up at Power 4 schools, bringing guys in. I like the Squirrel White edition.
He's good.
Yeah, I like Squirrel White. I know Eric Kane of Locked On Vols is not quite, or the Tennessee fan base at least, is not quite as high on him as I am, maybe, but I think that his perception of underperformance was a little bit more about Nico and a little bit less about the talent that Squirrel White has. Has he upgraded with Thomas Castellanos? I'll give you that question to wrap up the segment. Is this year's Castellanos better than, not the baseball player, better than last year's Nico Iamaleava?
Yes, because it's with Gus Malzahn's offense. And just to use Squirrel as an example, he'll catch 60 to 70 balls this year, a lot of screens, a lot of reverses, short stuff, where the poor soul in front of him's got to tackle Squirrel one-on-one. Good luck. They're just going to get him the ball and let him kind of play basketball on grass. It's not fun, but you still got to do it. And if you don't shade to him, it's hard. But if you do, then they're going to throw to that 6'6" guy, Deuce Robinson. So it's a tough pill to swallow. Florida State's top 2 receivers can match up with any school in the country. It's just they got so much talent that's young behind it. Again, neither one of those can get hurt. So they'll have some moments, but they'll also probably have some duds too.